One thrust of a spear, and the king would die. Abishai was a warrior, feared across Israel, a man who never backed down from battle. Now he stood over King Saul as the king slept helplessly. The war could end with a single strike, but one man had other plans. In the land of Judah, in the hill country south of Bethlehem, there lived a woman named Zeruiah, sister to a shepherd boy who would one day be king. Zeruiah had 3 sons. The eldest was Joab. The youngest was Asahel, swift as a deer upon the mountains. The middle son was Abishai. Abishai grew up in the years when Israel had no king but Saul, and when his uncle David was still a shepherd among the flocks of Jesse. When David rose to fight the Philistine Goliath, and when the people sang his name in the streets, Abishai watched his uncle's fame grow. When Saul's jealousy turned to rage, and David fled into the wilderness to escape the king's spear, Abishai did not stay behind. He went out into the caves and the dry valleys of En-Gedi and Ziph, and there he joined David's men. David's company grew in the wilderness. Men in distress, men in debt, men with nothing left to lose, came to him in the caves, and David became their captain. Abishai was among the chief of these mighty men, alongside his brother Joab. They moved often, from the cave of Adullam to the strongholds of the wilderness, from Keilah to the wilderness of Maon, staying always ahead of Saul's searching men, sleeping among the rocks, drinking from hidden springs, learning the hidden paths of the hill country. They were terrified that Saul might find David. One night, David's spies brought word that King Saul had pitched his camp on the hill of Hachilah, hunting for David with 3,000 chosen men. David did not wait for the men to come to him. He rose up and went down to the hill where Saul lay camped to see the place for himself, and then he turned to his soldiers and asked who would go down with him into the camp by night. Abishai answered. He said he would go down with David. The 2 of them left the rest of the company behind and went down from the higher ground into the valley, where Saul's camp lay sleeping. They crossed the open ground between the rocks, moving carefully in the dark until they came to the edge of the camp. The soldiers lay around Saul in a circle, and Abner, the captain of the host, lay near him. Saul himself lay in the center, his spear stuck in the ground at his head. The Lord had cast a deep sleep over the entire camp, and not a man stirred as David and Abishai stepped between the sleeping bodies, passing close by the watchman who did not wake, passing close by Abner, who did not wake. Abishai looked down at Saul. He whispered to David that God had delivered the king into his hand this day, and that one thrust of the spear would end it. David refused. He told Abishai not to destroy Saul, for he was the Lord's anointed, and whoever lifted a hand against him would bear the guilt. Instead, David took Saul's spear and his water jug from beside his head, and the 2 men withdrew from the camp the same way they had entered, stepping back between the sleeping soldiers, climbing back up out of the valley to the hill on the other side. And no one woke, and no one saw, and no one knew, because the Lord had closed their eyes. When they reached the other side of the valley, David stood on the hilltop and called out to the camp below, to Abner, and held up the spear and the jug as proof of what he had not done. In time, Saul died in battle against the Philistines on Mount Gilboa, and his sons died with him. The house of Saul did not end there, for one son lived. His name was Ishbosheth, and Abner the captain made him king over Israel, while the tribe of Judah made David their king in Hebron. War broke out between the 2 houses. Joab led David's army out, and Abner led the army of Ishbosheth, and the 2 forces met at Gibeon, at the pool there. 12 young men from each side fought first, and all 24 fell together, and the place was called the Field of Sharp Edges. Then the full battle began, and David's men prevailed, and Abner's army fled before them. Asahel, the youngest of Zeruiah's sons, was swift, and he ran after Abner. Abner called back to him to turn aside, to fight one of the younger soldiers instead. But Asahel would not turn. Abner warned him a second time that he did not wish to strike him down, for then he would not be able to look Joab in the face. Still, Asahel pursued. So Abner struck backward with the butt of his spear, and it went through Asahel's body, and he fell and died where he fell. The men running behind stopped when they came to the place where Asahel lay. Joab and Abishai took up the pursuit themselves, chasing Abner until the sun went down, until they came to the hill of Ammah, on the way to the wilderness of Gibeon. The men of Benjamin gathered behind Abner on the hilltop, forming together into one band again, and Abner called out to Joab from the rise, asking how long the sword would devour, asking him to call his men back from their brothers. Joab answered that, as God lived, if Abner had not spoken, the men would have pursued their brothers until morning light. Then Joab blew the trumpet, and all the people stood still, and the pursuit ended, and the men turned back. Abner and his men walked all that night and crossed the Jordan, and went on through the morning, until they came to Mahanaim. Joab turned back from following Abner, gathered all his people and counted them, and found 19 of David's servants missing, besides Asahel. They carried Asahel's body to Bethlehem, and buried him in his father's tomb. And Joab and Abishai walked through the night back to Hebron, arriving as the sun came up. But what they did not know yet was that this was not the end of it. A debt had been opened in Joab's heart that night on the hill, and though years would pass and peace would come between the houses, that debt had not been closed. It would be paid in full in a city named Hebron, at a gate, by a hand no one suspected. For a time afterward, the houses of Saul and David remained at war, until Abner himself came to David in Hebron to make peace and bring all of Israel under him. David made a feast for Abner and the men who came with him, and sent them away in peace. But Joab returned to the city after Abner had gone, and learned that he had come and left unharmed. Joab sent messengers after Abner, and brought him back to Hebron, and there at the gate of the city, as though to speak with him quietly, Joab struck him down, in revenge for the blood of Asahel their brother. David mourned Abner's death, and declared before all the people that he had no part in it, that the guilt belonged to Joab and his house. And he commanded the people to tear their clothes, and put on sackcloth, and mourn before Abner's body. And the king himself walked behind the bier to the grave, and wept at the tomb, and would not eat bread that day, though the people urged him. Abishai stood in the same house as his brother in this matter, for the blood of Asahel was the blood of both of them, though it was Joab's hand that struck the blow. The kingdom came together under David. Jerusalem was taken from the Jebusites. The ark was brought up. The years passed, and Israel grew strong, and her enemies grew many. Abishai remained close at David's side through all of it, one of the chief among the mighty men of the king. One of the most notable parts of Abishai's life came during the wars with the nations surrounding Israel. The Edomites rose against Israel in the Valley of Salt, far to the south, where the land turns dry and white, near the great Sea of Salt. Abishai led the army of David against them there, and he struck down 18,000 Edomites in that valley. And Edom was subdued and became servants to David, and garrisons were set throughout their land. In the wars against the Ammonites and the Arameans who had hired them, the armies of the surrounding kings gathered together against Israel, and Joab went out to meet them with the whole army of the mighty men. He saw that the battle was set against him both in front and behind, the Arameans before him and the Ammonites at his rear. So he divided the army into 2 companies. He took the chosen men himself to face the Arameans, and gave the rest of the people into the hand of Abishai, his brother, to face the Ammonites. The 2 brothers stood back to back against 2 armies on the same field. Joab told Abishai to be courageous, and that they should be strong for the sake of their people and the cities of their God, and that the Lord would do what seemed good to him. Then Joab and the people with him drew near to battle against the Arameans, and the Arameans fled before him. And when the Ammonites saw the Arameans fleeing, they fled before Abishai as well, and went into the city, and the brothers returned together to Jerusalem. Years later, David's own son Absalom rose up against him, and David fled Jerusalem with those loyal to him, going up the slope of the Mount of Olives weeping as he climbed, his head covered, his feet bare, and the people with him weeping as they climbed. As David went down from the city and continued along the road, a man named Shimei of the house of Saul came out from Bahurim and walked along the opposite hillside, cursing David as he went, throwing stones and dust at him, calling him a man of blood and a worthless man. Abishai walked near David in that company, and he asked the king why this dead dog should be allowed to curse the king, asking leave to go over and take off his head. David refused him, saying that if the Lord had told Shimei to curse him, who was Abishai to stop it, and that perhaps the Lord would look on his affliction and repay him with good. So they continued on the road toward the wilderness, and Shimei continued cursing and throwing stones and dirt the whole way along the hillside opposite, until David and his people reached safety beyond the Jordan, weary from the road. The war against Absalom came to its battle in the forest of Ephraim. Joab commanded the army, with Abishai and another captain, each leading a third of the men, and David himself stood at the gate of the city as the troops went out by their hundreds and their thousands. Before the battle, David had given strict command in the hearing of all 3 captains that the young man Absalom should not be harmed. The battle went out into the field against Israel, and the fighting spread through the forest of Ephraim, and 20,000 fell that day in the forest itself devouring more people than the sword. Absalom himself, fleeing on a mule, was caught by his hair in the thick branches of a great oak, and there he hung between heaven and earth while his mule ran out from under him. Joab found him there and killed him against the king's command, and the war ended, and the army returned, and David mourned for his son. After Absalom's death, when David returned across the Jordan toward Jerusalem, Shimei came again, this time hurrying down with the men of Judah to meet the king, falling at David's feet at the crossing, begging forgiveness. Abishai answered, as he had before, that Shimei ought to die for cursing the Lord's anointed. David rebuked the answer and spared Shimei's life that day, swearing he would not die.
These videos take many hours to make. If you could, please like and subscribe. Also, we want to know which countries our viewers are watching this video from. Please comment the country you are watching from. We noticed the characters changed appearance a lot in this video. We are very sorry, as we can't fix it halfway through. Thank you, until the next video.